but to step back from royal life. Witnesses have described the horrific aftermath of a fight that saw 3 men stabbed to death in East London. They died in the Seven Kings area of Ilford last night. 2 men are being questioned on suspicion of murder. These people live nearby.
Every day someone's getting attacked with a knife or shot. It's just terrible.
I see some people really dangerous sometimes.
I just find it really scary, and it's quite stupid for people to just go stabbing other people.
The House of Lords has voted to give EU nationals physical proof of their status after Brexit. In the first defeat for the government since the general election, peers backed the opposition amendment to the Withdrawal Agreement Bill. But ministers are likely to overturn the defeat when it returns to the Commons later this week. Tony Hall is to stand down as Director General of the BBC after 7 years. He's said one person should lead the corporation through its mid-term review in 2022, then the renewal of its charter 5 years later. Lord Hall will leave in the summer to chair the board of the National Gallery. Malaysia has sent back 150 containers of plastic waste to more than a dozen countries, warning it will not become the world's rubbish dump. The country has become a key destination for shipments containing refuse since China banned imports of waste in 2018. The LBC Markets Report. The FTSE 100 has closed down 23 at 76.51. The pound buys $1.29 and a euro 17. And LBC weather. A largely clear and frosty night ahead, milder with some cloud and drizzle in the northwest, a low of -1. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Thomas Watts.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation, the Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. HS2. It's a subject that I've cared about for a long time. It's a subject that I've campaigned on for a long time. Indeed, I remember in 2013 campaigning up the railway line, or the proposed railway line, saying that it should not be built, that it would go massively over cost, that it did not solve the country's main transport problems. And I remember, as leader of UKIP, winning a lot of seats in county councils and district councils all the way up that line. And indeed, through last year in 2019, maybe it wasn't directly relevant, but even in the European election campaign, I was saying scrap HS2. I just don't think we in this country do these big projects very well. Remember, not a penny of private money ever went into HS2 because no one trusted the estimates. Originally, it was going to cost 32 billion. When I first started campaigning against it. Then we were told it's been revised, it's going to be 56 billion. And then we were told, oh dear, we've got it slightly wrong. We now think it might be 88 billion. Well, story put out today in the Financial Times saying that they've seen a government internal review suggesting that the cost now might be 106 billion pounds. So the estimate for doing this, and bear in mind, very little's happened so far, has trebled since we started. And the cost of it, now this is remarkable, £500,000 for every 6 feet. £500,000 for the sort of height of a medium to tallish man-woman. I mean, it just strikes me as being bonkers. I don't think it solves the transport problems of the north. The argument that you'll hear from Andy Burnham in Manchester and others, it's going to be fantastic because what it'll mean is it's much easier to get to the north. It'll bring more business to the north. Well, let me tell you, my experience of this in France, where they built the TGV. When I first went to Strasbourg, the train from Paris to Strasbourg was 5 hours and 10 minutes. The train from Paris to Strasbourg today is about 2 hours, give or take a few minutes either way. Marseille was 6 hours. Now Marseille is 3 hours away. And what's happened with Lyon and Marseille and towns like that, and Strasbourg too, is rather than business leaving Paris and going out to the provincial cities, actually more of them have decided that, you know what, it's a very easy commute now to Paris, isn't it? So it's driven more business into the capital, and I see no evidence this will help the north. Now, as with many of the things that I've campaigned on and that have proved quite popular with the public, the government, Boris Johnson's government, have very much been singing that tune and saying during the recent election campaign they would review HS2. And indeed, today, the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, said they are considering it.
We will come to a conclusion on this quite shortly, but this is a genuine exercise where we're genuinely getting the data together and analysing it, and it's worth taking the time to get that decision right. It's a massive decision for the country.
You're absolutely right, Grant Shapps. It is a massive decision. When you say you're getting the data together, do you mean you'd rather the FT hadn't published the fact that internally you now think it may cost $106 billion? And think what you could do with that money. I mean, for example, drive down the A303 and you get to an amazing World Heritage site. It's called Stonehenge. But as you get to Stonehenge, the dual carriageway ends. It is a non-stop traffic jam at one of, the great historical sites of this country. To build a tunnel under it, which was proposed 25 years ago, that would cost, I say only, but that would cost £1.7 billion. So for £106 billion, you could arguably put together 50 major infrastructure projects across this country, benefiting millions. There is a massive problem in the north of England with east-west communication. That's where new train lines are needed. That's where actually more road capacity too is needed. So I am unequivocally against HS2. And I'm asking you tonight, do you think Boris should scrap HS2? Let me know on 0345 6060 973. Text me on 84850. You can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC. And you can watch us via your smartphone, if you wish, on Twitter, YouTube and Facebook. Now, there are other voices too coming out quite critical of HS2. And I thought that former Labour Transport Secretary and, of course, former Chancellor Alistair Darling on LBC this morning, I thought he was absolutely bang on.
And what we've seen today is all too predictable. The costs have doubled in just a year, and the result is they're going to go ahead with the southern bit, but the northern bit will have to wait yet again. So all the talk about doing something for the Midlands and the north of England, it will come to nothing unless they rethink the way this project has been put in place.
Now, I agree with all of that, and I've given you the arguments against. But over the weekend, and conscious that there is pressure on the government, conscious that the public do not like spiralling cost, a very powerful argument for keeping HS2 was made. And this is what Boris, I think in many ways, has to add up. Number one, £7.4 billion has been spent already. So if you cancel the project, you've lost £7.4 billion. Moreover, a letter from 40 rail and construction bosses warned the PM that dumping the project would have a devastating impact on their industries, and they say it would torpedo the government's aim of narrowing the north-south divide. They say that scrapping the project could cost 10,000 jobs. And these are big companies, Hitachi Rail, Bombardier Transport, these kind of firms. Now, look, clearly they are self-interested. Clearly they want big government projects. They may have a point that many thousands of people who could be employed won't be employed. But then if we're spending the money better, we'll probably end up employing more people across a broader range of projects. So I've tried to give you the argument for. I feel very passionately against. I'm going to argue Boris Johnson, scrap HS2, spend that money to benefit not just a few thousand people who are prepared to pay hundreds of pounds on railway tickets to get to Manchester. Spend it to benefit millions. I've had my say. I want to know what you think. I want to know what Carl, who's calling from Pinner, thinks. Good evening, Carl.
Good evening, Nigel. Nice to speak to you again. Hope you're okay.
You're okay? We've got Brexit in 11 days' time. Of course I'm okay, Carl. I'm absolutely over the moon about where we're going.
Well, we've got to thank you, UKIP and the Brexit Party for that, because without you, it would never have happened, although probably we're not going to get the deal we want, but I think you've done a great job.
Well, do you know what? I think, Carl, we'll argue about the deal over the course of the coming months. But I think for now, after 3.5 years of absolute deadlock and our country looking a bit of a laughingstock in the world, I think we should celebrate. But hey, Carl, we're not talking Brexit. We're talking HS2. So come on, what do you think?
Well, I think that the money could be better spent for other things. We obviously need money spent on the NHS. We need money spent on schools and housing. I don't think that saving 15 minutes on a trip up to Manchester is to make any difference to any commuter. I think that the money could be spent better elsewhere.
What about? I mean, Carl, you talk about NHS schools and schools, housing, understandably, but what about other infrastructure projects?
Well, there's plenty of the money can be spent on. Obviously, the big thing with the Conservatives in the election was the extra policemen on the streets, and I think that's great. Well, then we can spend the money from HS2 on more policemen on the streets. I mean, there's plenty of money that could be spent on rather than saving 15 minutes.
Well, I think it's actually 21 minutes. I think from memory...
I'm sorry, I didn't know it's 21.
And some suggest it could be even more than that. I don't know, Carl. All I do know is that if I get a train from Euston to Manchester, it's 2 hours and 6 minutes, and I get out in the middle of the central business district of Manchester, and provided I've got a decent seat, actually, I don't care about saving a bit of time. Carl, you've made the point. We can spend the money on better things. Thank you. David is a new caller to LBC from Newmarket in Suffolk. David, good evening.
Hello, Nigel. How are you?
I am well. I've been campaigning against HS2 for years, David.
Right.
And I'm now wondering what Boris is going to do.
Boris will probably continue it, I think. I think he, going regarding election results and the people's views of this country, I think HS2 will continue. I know there's been a lot of revolt about it.
Yep.
I don't live anywhere where the HS2 will go, but as a British citizen, I think it'll be a good thing for the country. I really do. I think it will reduce journey times by about 20 minutes, but they've spent billions already on it, Nigel, and I think it would be a good idea. Continue the project, and we'll get through that, and I think it'll be best for the British people in a whole, in my view.
Well, it's not in your backyard, David, is it, I suppose? Which, I mean, if you lived in Chilterns...
Yeah. I mean, you have to go off motorways to come to my backyard, you have to,
I suspect, David, if you lived in the Chilterns, you might feel very differently about this.
Well, I mean, to be honest, Nigel, if Boris Johnson wants to build a motorway from Norwich to Ipswich, I'll be glad of that, right? I mean, it's great for my part of the world, but you have to be understanding where technology lies, and I think HS2 would be a great thing for this country. I mean, if you look at parts of Japan, East Asia, for example, where they've had a high-speed railway for a long time, that's good for the economy. It'd be good. I think it's a great thing, and I think it should continue.
Well, David, I'm making the argument that Manchester is only 2 hours away by train anyway. That isn't very long. We're not. I can see in France why the TGV has revolutionised travel. As I say, 6 hours to Marseille becomes 3 hours. It's a hell of a difference.
Well, put it this way: you can get up half an hour earlier if you got half an hour off your journey time, right? I mean, it makes sense. I mean,
what about? I tell you what, David. What about widening the M6?
Well, the M6. I mean,
because that's a nightmare. From Cheshire right up through Lancashire, it's a complete nightmare, and there are hundreds of thousands a day use that road.
Yeah. Well, we're not talking about motorways. We're talking about high-speed railway, aren't we?
Well, we are, but we're also talking about priorities. David, you've made the argument for. Thank you very much indeed for picking up the phone to LBC. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it's 6:15. Time for news headlines with Thomas Watts.
The government indicated a decision on the HS2 rail project will be made within weeks after a leaked report warned of another rise in costs. 2 men are being questioned on suspicion of murder after 3 men were stabbed to death in a fight in Ilford in East London. Sir Keir Starmer has become the first Labour leadership contender to be guaranteed a place on the final ballot paper. LBC weather. Clear and cold for many tonight. Some light rain in the northwest. A low of -1.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. There are queues on the M1 northbound after an accident earlier on between the M25 and Junction 8 for Hemel Hempstead. All the lanes are back open again. On the M25 anti-clockwise, it's very slow because of a breakdown between Junction 13 for Staines and Junction 12 for the M3. The car's also broken down on the M25 anti-clockwise between Junction 7 for the M23 and Junction 6 for Godstone, so it's slow. There are queues on the M40 northbound because of emergency repairs between the M25 and Junction 2 for Beaconsfield. In Finchley, the North Circular Road westbound stays closed at Henley's Corner for a police investigation, so there are queues from Coney Hatch Lane. In Seven Kings, the High Road stays closed both ways for a police investigation. And on the train, South Eastern have delays of over an hour and a half and some cancellations between Rochester and Faversham after an investigation earlier on.
This is LBC.
Morning, robot.
What are your instructions?
Start with the invoices, then crack on with the expenses.
Why not use Xero? Your bills and receipts are easy to capture and get stored automatically.
If I'm using Xero for my books, I need you for...
Karaoke? Daisy.
No thanks.
Manage your accounts easily with Xero. Visit xero.com.
This is LBC.
There's nothing like meeting face-to-face. And there's nothing like Zoom to make that happen. Zoom lets you connect and do business across town or around the world. Zoom ties together all of your communication needs into one easy platform for video conferencing, phone calls, group chat, webinars, and your conference rooms. Connect easily from anywhere, your mobile phone, your laptop, or conference room. Zoom is how business gets done. Get your free account at zoom.com today. Meet happy with Zoom.
Here at Tesco, we're celebrating over 100 years of great value, with even more great prices that take you back. Like a 12-pack of Bird's Eye chicken dippers, now half price, from £2 to just £1. All this week at Tesco.
Selected larger stores subject to availability. Offer ends 27th of January.
The Vodafone Big Winter Sale is now on. Now you can get average speeds of 63 megabits per second of super-fast fibre broadband for only £20 a month for selected pay monthly customers. Just one of the amazing offers in the Vodafone Big Winter Sale. Go online or in store today. The future is exciting. Ready? Vodafone.
Prices may change. 18-month term subject to credit acceptance and availability. Ends 30th of January. 61% of Superfast 2 customers receive sync speed above 63 megabits per second. Visit vodafone.co.uk/broadband.
Attention, please. We at HealthSpan would like to tell you something that, quite possibly, you didn't already know. Not all supplements are created equal. I know. Who'd have thought? We travel the entire globe to find the best ingredients for our vitamins and supplements. From the southern slopes of India for our turmeric to the cold, crisp seas of Greenland for our cod liver oil. Because that's the HealthSpan way. Well, there you go. It's not every day you learn something new, is it? We're HealthSpan. That's healthspan.co.uk. Vitamins and supplements. In-store or direct to your door.
The real reason Sleeping Beauty fell asleep was because it was taking so long for the palace to sell. And the handsome prince needed the proceeds to buy their new home with no time to dwell.
I know who can help. Property Rescue. I'll contact them straight away.
So he spoke to their friendly team who took care of every detail. They bought the palace direct with no legal fees to pay. Fast forward to living happily ever after. Visit propertyrescue.co.uk. Property Rescue. Fast forward to sold.
This is LBC, the Nigel Farage Show. Call 0345 6060 973. Text 84850. Tweet at LBC using the hashtag Farage on LBC.
As Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says, the government faces a massive decision on whether to continue with HS2. On the one hand, they've spent £7.4 billion already. It'll employ up to 10,000 people. It will cut journey times by about 20 minutes to Birmingham and up to 50 minutes, in fact, to Manchester, depending, of course, how often the train stops. On the other side, we started off with an estimate of 33 billion. We're now told it could be 106 billion. Any advance? I mean, I remember the Scottish Parliament came in 10 times over the original budget. And so it is a big decision. And my feeling strongly is that money could be better spent on a much broader range of projects, and some very strong passions coming out from all of you. You know, Christine says, and I'm with her totally, use this money to upgrade existing lines and trains. Do you know, it's arguably slower today to go from Paddington to Penzance than it was in 1914. Yeah, I'm not making it up. So there are many parts of the country very poorly served. HS2, she says, is just a very expensive vanity project that will only benefit the rich. Taxpayers paying for it, the wealthy benefiting. Christine, HS2 is designed for passengers who will be spending a lot of money on those tickets. Now, there is a capacity problem. We understand that. And clearly, we're going to have to extend stations, extend trains. There are many things we're going to have to do, but this is a massive, massive cost. James says, just to get there 20 minutes earlier, you could not make it up. Sandra is calling from Carlisle, up in Cumbria. Sandra, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel.
So, HS2, what should Boris do?
It should be cancelled.
Should it? Why?
Not because of the money.
Right.
because of the damage it's going to do to the wildlife, trees. It's criminal what they're going to do. And that's what I'm against. The money doesn't bother me, but lifting up the countryside that's been there for hundreds of years is devastating.
But Sandra, couldn't you argue that every road you build, every railway line you build, every new town you build, in a sense, does do that?
Yes, I do. I agree. We shouldn't build so many roads. Get people off the roads and go back to the old railways that we had.
But the trouble is, Sandra, with railways, and I'm going to actually include roads in this too. You know, our population has risen by 6 million since 2001. We are struggling for capacity, aren't we?
Yes. Well, send the people back that shouldn't be here, and that would help.
Well, yeah, there are. Who knows whether it's 500,000 or 1 million people here illegally? Maybe it's 1.5 million. I don't know. Sandra, you make the environmental case. I thank you for your call. Ed is calling from Romford. Ed, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. It's very nice to speak to someone so influential.
Well, that's very sweet of you, Ed. Thank you. So,
welcome.
What do you make of high-speed rail, Ed?
Well, point I was making earlier was that, you know, the foreign countries like the Far East and Japan have high-speed bullet trains. They've had them for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
They've afforded them. Why hasn't this country afforded them?
It's not as if our train lines up from London to Newcastle or London to Manchester, I mean, they're not slow anyway. I mean,
yeah,
I don't think that 2 hours is particularly excessive to Manchester.
I think the budget must be there in foreign countries like Japan, the same size as this country, can afford point-to-point fast trains.
Well, France has done. I mean, look, France has done it too, Ed. But obviously, France is much bigger geographically than we are. I mean, look, we've just had a new government elected. All right, promising to improve the physical infrastructure of the country, and can I say the digital infrastructure of the country. Do you know, Ed, I drove up the M1 the other day, and I found vast sections of the M1. I couldn't make a phone call. I mean, I can't believe it. I mean, I get better mobile phone connectivity in Africa than I get in many parts.
I thought we were talking about HS2 trains.
We're talking about
digital infrastructure.
Ed, we're talking about 106 billion quid, right? And my argument is, and I do understand your point, other countries have built these bullet trains, I get that. My argument, Ed, is we can spend that money better to benefit a lot more people.
On what?
Digital infrastructure, east-west railway lines across the north of England.
Everybody can get fast broadband for 20 quid a month now in this country.
Why can't I get a mobile phone signal going through Nottinghamshire? Because I can't.
Why not? Because it's a rural area.
Well, all right, Ed, you think? I mean, I get your point. Other countries have done it. We should do it. You've argued that you've made the case for it, and I thank you. Portia on YouTube says the Prime Minister should be protecting our money, not considering wasting it. How many more times will the cost change? Portia, as I've said, 33 billion, 56 billion, 88 billion, now 106 billion. Any offers over 106? I mean, it just, who knows where this ends. Jim says, just keep it between London and Birmingham. Well, but hang on. It's the north that's got the real problem. You know, I don't think the connectivity between London and Birmingham is bad. It's just capacity, I know, is really the problem. B says, yep, it's expensive, but it will be beneficial over the long term. So arguments for and against, a lot of messages coming in, actually an amazing amount of passion that this particular subject raises. Caroline is a new caller to LBC from Milton Keynes. Caroline, how are you?
Hi, how do you do? I'm well, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm fine, thank you. So there you are, Milton Keynes. You're on the M1. You're pretty much on the existing railway line. Mm-hmm. And now they're going to build another one quite close to you.
They are. Yeah, I never thought I would find myself agreeing with you, Nigel. No disrespect. But on this one, I am completely with you. I'm about half an hour away from the HS2 line, so this is not a case of NIMBYism here.
Okay.
It's not a local problem. It's not just the people that it is going to affect up and down its route, going through rural communities, having houses repossessed, the impact upon wildlife. There's going to be 108 ancient woodlands that are going to be destroyed.
I saw that,
33 sites of special scientific interest. 963 wildlife and nature reserves are going to be destroyed by HS2. This is a national scandal, and it's also a global problem because HS2 will never be, well, it won't be carbon neutral for 120 years. So at a time when our government declared an environmental and ecological emergency, they're not behaving as though there is one because they are, and so far, endorsing a project that is environmentally destructive and adding insult to injury to the environmentalists at a most eye-watering cost. I believe HS2 Limited has lied to Parliament, has lied to the government. How can they possibly, within the space of a year, double their budget?
It's unbelievable.
They knew.
Caroline,
they
you sound
knew along.
you sound quoting all these facts and figures to me like, I mean, are you an actual campaigner against HS2?
I am.
Yeah,
I
guess you might be. But interestingly,
I'm actually sitting in my car waiting for my little boy who's in an acrobatics class, and I'm writing a letter to my MP, to Boris Johnson, to Grant Shapps, which I am going to hand deliver to the Houses of Parliament on Wednesday between 11 and 2.
Well, you're very
If
passionate.
you come with your letters, you can come and join us.
You're very well. I feel very strongly about it too. And you're the second caller. You're the second caller so far on this show to make the environmental case. Caroline, I have to say this to you: if we absolutely need another railway line, then I think what we should do is do what we've done in Kent. You know, you can go through the middle of Kent, and you've got the old A20. The M20 next to it, the old railway line, and the high-speed line, and it's a very narrow gap between all four of those, going right through the centre of Kent. So you what you do is you keep the blight confined to the narrowest possible area, and HS2 doesn't do that. And Caroline,
no, that is quite correct. And I've heard an argument to say that HS2, if it was going to be built, it should have gone up the M1 corridor.
Yes,
but I would argue that we don't actually even need a high-speed railway in this country.
As I say, Caroline, my view is if it has to be built, you build it alongside the existing M1, M6 and that railway line. Caroline, thank you for your call. Caroline, clearly incredibly passionate, and she says that she feels that HS2 have misled Parliament. Well, I'm sure, Caroline, they would say they had not misled Parliament, but I do know, as I say, having campaigned up and down the length of that line, I do know that it raises a lot of very strong passions, and yeah, you could argue third runway at Heathrow equally, you know, brings huge passionate debates. But it's like the Newbury bypass, isn't it? It's like, you know, people, swampy, hiding in tunnels or trees. There is always opposition to any new project, any new development, whether we build a motorway, a railway line, a power station. These things are all ugly. They're all environmentally damaging, but we accept in the modern world, and with a growing population, that we have to do these things. I just don't think this is the right project. I think it's hopelessly, financially out of control. I think it's going to benefit very, very few, and the rest of us are going to pay for it. That's my view. This is the Nigel Farage Show. This is LBC. It is 6:30, and time for the news with Thomas Watts.
The government says a decision on whether HS2 should continue to be built will be made in weeks rather than months. A widely leaked government-commissioned review has warned the cost of the high-speed rail project could rise by another 20% to £106 billion. Prince Harry has held a private meeting with Boris Johnson on the sidelines of a US-Africa summit in London. In a speech last night, the Duke of Sussex said he and Meghan had no other option but to step back from public life. Authorities in China say human-to-human transmission has been confirmed in the outbreak of a viral respiratory illness. There are now more than 200 cases of the new strain of coronavirus, mostly in the central city of Wuhan. LBC weather, largely clear and frosty this evening, milder with some cloud and drizzle in the northwest, a low of -1.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast. Weekday mornings from 7.
The so-called Fox racism row. As you've probably worked out, I'm male and I'm white and I am fairly privileged. Does that mean I'm not allowed an opinion? Are you honestly telling me that means I'm not allowed a view? Barry and Lewisham, what do you say? Good morning.
Everyone is entitled to a view. However, the weight of that view should be weighted according to that person's perspective.
So does that mean, in the Duchess of Sussex's case, or Meghan's, a black person scores higher on their view tally, or whatever you want to do it, because of their skin colour? Does a black person have a better view, or a view that's deemed more merit-worthy than a white person on Meghan?
They have a better perspective.
Nick Ferrari at breakfast.
With Xero. Get your business digital ready with Xero accounting software.
LBC.
How much money will you get when you sell your car?
11,000. 12,000.
12,600.
£13,000.
Wouldn't it be great if you could see offers from online buyers and specialist car dealers all in one place? Motorway.co.uk is the comparison site to sell your car. With Motorway, it's easy to compare offers and find your best deal. You could get up to £1,000 more. Go to motorway.co.uk, the easy way to sell your car for more.
Motorway.co.uk.
We live in an age where you can stream any box set instantly. But staying on top of our pensions is anything but instant. PensionBee can transfer most old pensions together into one simple online plan. So you can manage your pension on your smartphone as simply as streaming that box set. Download the app or visit pensionbee.com today.
Authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Capital at risk.
Attention, please. We at HealthSpan would like to tell you something that, quite possibly, you didn't already know. Not all supplements are created equal. I know. Who'd have thought? We travel the entire globe to find the best ingredients for our vitamins and supplements. From the southern slopes of India for our turmeric to the cold, crisp seas of Greenland for our cod liver oil. Because that's the HealthSpan way. Well, there you go. It's not every day you learn something new, is it? We're HealthSpan. That's healthspan.co.uk. Vitamins and supplements. In-store or direct to your door.
Cancer. It can affect anyone. And when it does, Macmillan are right there to support them. From the moment of diagnosis, we offer physical, financial, and emotional support. And it's your donations that make it possible. So we can be on the phone, in hospitals, running support centres, and ready to help people deal with the fallout. We are funded by you, the public. So please give what you can at macmillan.org.uk. Macmillan Cancer Support, right there with you.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are, or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
Here you are, it's January again.
Nuh-uh, this is 2020, the year of the boss. The year you leave your same old job and boss the business of your #dreams. And with a 3 business plan, you get exclusive benefits from FreshBooks, Moo, WeWork, and Wix. Plus, you can get unlimited data, and you'll be 5G ready at no extra cost. So you can ride the wave of new biz like an absolute pro.
Get a plan fit for a boss, because 3 means business, just like you. Compatible device required. See 3.co.uk/5G.
The Nigel Farage Show on LBC.
A massive decision the government are facing over what to do about HS2. £7.4 billion spent on it already, but now a proposed total cost of up to £106 billion. I think Boris should scrap it. What say you? Before I get back to your calls and comments on that, Prince Harry has spoken at a charity dinner of his decision to step back as a senior royal. But he says that he and Meghan aren't walking away. He says he wants a more peaceful life. Let's listen to Harry.
Once Meghan and I were married, we were excited, we were hopeful, and we were here to serve. For those reasons, it brings me great sadness that it has come to this. The decision that I have made for my wife and I to step back is not one I made lightly. It was so many months of talks after so many years of challenges. And I know I haven't always gotten it right, but as far as this goes, there really was no other option.
Well, I'm not a Republican, and I'm not going to go into a full anti-royal rant, but I'm really sorry, Harry. if you were ready to serve, the two of you, when you got married, why, just 20 months in, have you jacked it in? You also said in a speech, we're not walking away. Yes, you are. You really are walking away. You're giving up your titles, you're giving up your royal duties, you're moving to the West Coast. And he also went on to say that he's looking for a more peaceful life. Well, let's work this out. So Meghan goes to Hollywood, Meghan works for Disney, Meghan does the Oprah Winfrey Show. Quieter life, there'll be even more media interest in you than there was in this country. Unless, of course, Harry yourself, you're going to become the house husband on Vancouver Island. I just don't know. I'm sorry. You know, he did have other options. You know, and when he says there was no other option. Yeah, there was. You're a royal prince. You could have carried on with your life of privilege and your life of work and duty too. You've chosen to do something else. But now that you've made that decision, I wish both of you the very best of luck on a personal level. Absolutely. But I do feel the country's been a bit let down. And I do think the monarchy has been damaged by this. And I say that because, you know, I think about my children's perception of the royal family, and kind of what Harry brought to the royal family was this image of being cool, bit trendy, bit hip, and that has just gone. Back to HS2. Chris is calling from Sheffield. Chris, good evening.
Hi, Nigel. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, but I feel very strongly on this, Chris. How do you feel?
Well, I'm from, obviously, the Sheffield area, and it's an absolute shambles, the route up in the north. Mm-hmm. They've spent the past 3.5 years trying to integrate HS2 with the Northern Powerhouse Rail Scheme, which is the Manchester to Leeds, etc., etc.
Which, Chris, is very, very badly needed, isn't it?
It is. That's badly needed, but HS2 is not, because it's not going to do anything to help us get from Sheffield. I mean, on the current HS2 plans, you can't even travel on it from Leeds to Sheffield. You won't be able to get from Sheffield to Manchester on HS2. So what's the point in spending that money? We'd be better off spending that money on Northern Powerhouse Rail than ditching the scheme altogether, because it's an absolute joke.
Now, HS3, Chris, there were elements of that you might approve of, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely, because if you live in Sheffield,
yes,
you know, you can't really get between Sheffield and Manchester very easily, by rail or by car for that matter. You know, you can't get from Sheffield to Leeds to Manchester. There's no high-speed train services between any of these places.
It's just, you know, Chris, travelling east-west in the north of England is a complete, total and utter nightmare.
Absolutely. And the 106 billion that they're proposing to spend on the scheme, on top of that, which I don't think many people are aware, Transport for the North proposing to spend another 39 billion just to try and get HS2 around the northern cities. So we're up to 150 billion already. I mean, it's probably going to be close to 200 billion. It's an absolute scandal, and it needs scrapping immediately.
Chris, you've made the point incredibly concisely and clearly, and I thank you for that. If Boris wants to keep the northern votes, he should spend the money on improving transport links up there, says Sandra from Loughton. Nigel, isn't it strange how all taxpayer-funded projects, HS2, the Garden Bridge, repairing the Houses of Parliament, always overrun by a massive amount? Yeah, including ringing Big Ben, which cost $14,000 on New Year's Eve, but would cost $500,000 to celebrate Brexit. Hey, there we go. Adam is a new caller to the show from Birmingham. Adam, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. Listen, I want to make it clear. I'm a locum doctor. I work for the NHS. A locum, you know what a locum is?
Yep.
It's like temporary work.
Yep. So you're travelling a fair bit.
I'm travelling all over the place. The HS2 would make a massive impact on me. I work in accident and emergency. I'm a middle grade, which means I do the long 10, 12-hour shifts. I cover the on-call arrest bleep. I deal with cardiac arrests. I deal with shootings and stabbings and car accidents. I deal with the heavy stuff. If I get a call from the agency saying we've got a job up in Manchester from Birmingham where I am, or down in London from Birmingham where I am, the biggest issue is going to be the distance, the time it's going to take me to travel. So if I'm doing a 10-hour shift and I have at least an hour and a half each way, it's just going to add to the time that I'm not going to be in bed with my wife and my children.
And what happens if what happens, Adam, if you're called to Leeds or Cardiff?
Well, then I'm just going to... Well, I mean, Leeds and Cardiff is going to be a bit of an issue because I wouldn't typically...
But are you telling me, as a locum, that all the calls you get are from Manchester and London?
No, I'm not saying that.
Right,
I'm saying the exact opposite of that. But I'm saying if I was asked to come up north, I wouldn't invite because after having done a 10 or 12-hour shift, it's going to be a bit sketchy for me to drive. I wouldn't stay in hospital accommodation because I have a family at home. I want to spend my day shifts, my days.
No, I get that, Adam.
With them.
But let's be realistic, okay? If you're going from, and by the way, great what you do, and you clearly work damned hard, and thank you. But if you're going from Birmingham to London, how long by train is that taking?
If you're in the fast train, you're looking at 50 minutes. 50 minutes.
And what would it be and what would it be in 15 years' time or so when HS2 is built?
Right, so if apparently HS2 is saying they're going to bring it down to 21 minutes. We don't know where in London that's going to be, but we do know there's hospitals all over the city and hospitals all over the north of the country. But I'm telling you from the perspective of a doctor who is a
they would reduce. Okay, they would reduce. It won't come down to 20 minutes, but it will reduce by up to 20 minutes your travel time from Birmingham. Are you really saying that 20 minutes would make a big difference to your life?
I'm saying from my point of view, I mean, again, we don't know how much the tickets are going to cost.
A lot of money, don't worry about that.
So if they're going to cost too much, but I'm glad I'm speaking to you, Nigel, because you're the man who's been the front runner for Brexit, and that's fantastic, if that's what the public have wanted. But a big thing that you missed out on, I saw you on Question Time, I think it was, with, Russell Brand.
Oh, it's a long time. It's a long time ago. Yeah,
it was. You put him in his place when you were saying that is there enough space in the UK, and then Russell Brand said there's plenty of space, and you said there might be space to build houses, but there's not enough GP appointments, there's not enough preschool places and things like that. But here's what you seem to have missed out on, Nigel.
Go on, help me.
Someone who works for the NHS. The NHS, the primary most important staff of the NHS are doctors. I'm not trying to big myself up, or whatever, but doctors are more important than phlebotomists and porters. The doctors are the highest paid and have the most influence and the most responsibility. Now, the doctors are mostly, in this country, 37% of the doctors working for the UK's, for the NHS, are foreign graduates.
I know.
Right, so we're talking about 27,000 Indians, 13,000 Pakistanis, 7,000 Nigerians, 2,500 Romanians, 1,000 Bulgarians. Everybody is coming from abroad. And what really upsets me is if you go onto Wikipedia, you'll see that the UK is 67.5 million people. You're saying it's going to increase to 70 million in the next 10 years?
Yes, I am.
67.5 million people. According to Wikipedia, 87.1% of this country are white. I'm not trying to get all racial about it. I'm not going to be all like, there's heard this from.
I'm not sure. Hang on. Why does that, Adam? Come to the point, please.
Because the people who are becoming doctors are the children of immigrants and the children of the children of immigrants. It is the immigrants who are stepping forward and becoming doctors.
Well, Adam, you're right. There are some migrant communities. There are some migrant communities whose kids are doing phenomenally well, and that's great. But what I don't like is us poaching doctors and nurses from countries who probably need them more than we do. But I like to try. Adam, I'm going to let you go. You're a man of great passion. Let's go to Harry, who's calling from Greyshot in Hampshire. Good evening.
Good evening. I just wanted to ask the question that how can anybody in their right mind think that spending £5.25 billion per minute of travel time saved between London and Birmingham think it's a good idea?
Well done with that calculation, Henry. That's brilliant.
That is exactly what it is. £5.25 billion per minute of time saved.
How would you, Henry, having done that calculation, how would you describe that?
Well, I think it's absolutely ludicrous. I mean, if you bunged 20 lots of £5 billion into the northern areas for infrastructure, for industry, you've got 5G coming on board. There isn't any need for people to see face to face the whole bloody time. If it's people who are sorry, I shouldn't have used bad language.
Naughty man.
But if it's people, I used to have a business that was half in Liverpool and half in London.
Right.
And we saved an enormous amount of money by having board meetings with conference phones.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's happening more and more and more, and you can see each other's faces.
Nobody needed to travel. There wasn't any need to spend 300 quid on a ticket going up to Liverpool or 300 quid on a ticket.
No, I know. Listen, I get the point. I understand it. I thank you for another very passionate and badly behaved caller, but never mind, Henry. Thank you. This is the Nigel Farage Show. It is 6:45 and time for the news headlines with Thomas Watts.
The Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, says the decision on whether HS2 should continue must be based on the facts. Detectives are questioning 2 men on suspicion of murder after 3 others were stabbed to death in East London. England's cricketers have taken a 2-1 lead after the 3rd match of their Test series with South Africa. Clear and cold for many tonight, with some light rain in the northwest, a low of -1.
LBC Travel, I'm Dave Goff. In Finchley, the North Circular Road westbound stays closed at Henley's Corner for a police investigation, so they're accused from before Coney Hatch Lane. There are long delays on the M40 northbound. That's because of emergency repairs between the M25 and Junction 2 for Beaconsfield. It's taking around 45 minutes to queue through. It's very slow on the M1 northbound from Junction 5 for Watford through to Junction 8 for Hemel Hempstead after an accident earlier on. On the M25 anti-clockwise, it's slow from Junction 8 for Reigate to Junction 6 for Godstone after a van broke down earlier. It's also slow on the M23 northbound because a van's broken down. That's before the M25 in the roadworks. And on the train, South Eastern have delays of over an hour and a half and some cancellations between Rochester and Faversham.
Coming up at 7 on LBC, Ian Dale.
Our Monday night panel will answer the question, what should the shape of government look like after Brexit? And at 9, should Boris axe HS2?
Ian Dale on LBC.
Your company's doing pretty well. Your tax position's okay. So what's keeping you awake at night?
To face the future with confidence, talk to Vision Consulting. We've expanded from Gants Hill to the Gherkin, with clients from the fishmonger to the multi-million-pound property investment company. And our growth as a firm of chartered accountants and registered auditors is based on our passion for our clients' business.
Have confidence in your accountant. See visionconsulting.co.uk.
Fancy watching a film?
Could do. What's on?
This looks good. Spiders on a train.
What's it about?
Spiders knocking about on a train.
Sometimes the name says it all. Like the Big Tasty from McDonald's, with succulent beef, cheese, sliced tomato, lettuce, onions and lashings of our Big Tasty sauce. Available with or without bacon. Served after 11 a.m. until the 28th of January. Participating restaurants only, subject to availability.
At Ring, we've reinvented the doorbell. So no matter where you are or what time of day, you can watch over your home and the things you care about. Ring Video Doorbell streams HD video and two-way talk straight to your phone, so you can speak to whoever's at your door from anywhere.
Delivery.
Oh, great. Could you leave it with my neighbour, please?
Sure, no problem.
And it's so simple, you can install it yourself in minutes. See, hear and speak to whoever's at your door from wherever you are with Ring Video Doorbell. Available at ring.com and selected retailers.
To stay ahead of the competition, you need to know when to invest in your business, which is why now is the perfect time for you to take advantage of the Renault Pro Plus New for Old van scheme. Get £6,500 off the list price on the new Renault Traffic, tailored to your business when you trade in your existing van, so you get the upgrade you need to keep your business out in front. Let's invest in you. Search Renault Vans or visit your local dealer today. Order by 31st of March and register by 30th September. Business users only. Participating dealers only. For T's and C's, visit renault.co.uk/van offers.
You know what it's like when you can't find your debit card? Panic. That's what it's like. Until you realise, as a Halifax Visa debit card holder, that you can freeze your card on the spot. Control your Halifax Visa debit card with the Halifax mobile app. Easy as.
You can only freeze certain transaction types. Terms and conditions apply.
At the Bank of Santander, they've created Stan, a smart bot that can predict the future of remortgaging.
I read Stan. Will my mortgage rate go up?
1955 was the last time Newcastle won the cup.
No, try not to mumble.
Playing, let's get ready to rumble.
Meanwhile, at Santander, they can't predict your future, but they'll help secure it with great mortgage rates fixed for up to 10 years. See what's possible at Santander.
Early repayment charges apply. Lending subject to status and criteria. Your home may be repossessed if you do not keep up repayments on your mortgage.
This is your captain speaking. I'd like to welcome you on board today's flight. As we're currently behind schedule, we're going to skip all the pre-flight checks and just proceed with takeoff. I've given the tyres a kick and I think we've got enough fuel to get there, and the oil warning light hasn't come on yet, so buckle up and enjoy the flight.
You wouldn't fly without the proper checks, so why drive without them? Highways England recommends you check your tyres, fuel and oil before every long journey. For more information on vehicle safety checks, search Think.
Leading Britain's conversation. LBC, The Nigel Farage Show.
HS2 aside, another area that I've campaigned hard on over the years is immigration. I've just felt the numbers have got completely out of control and that we'd need something like an Australian-style point system to sort it out. Well, blow me down. If now the Boris Johnson government doesn't say we're going to have an Australian-style point system, and many of the things that I was called a lot of very nasty names for even suggesting are now mainstream. But I think there are some confusions here as to what Boris really means on this. You know, the message was put out to the voters in the election, vote for us, we're going to do something about immigration. And today, Boris was talking at the UK-Africa Investment Summit, and this is what he had to say.
Treating people the same wherever they come from. And by putting people before passports...
Oh, really?
...we will be able to attract the best talent from around the world.
So Boris Johnson is putting people before passports. Can somebody give me an interpreter? Can we work out what that actually means? I do agree with the principle of treating people fairly, regardless of where they come from. So we shouldn't discriminate in favour of a Bulgarian over an Indian, and not being EU members will allow us to make those choices. And that principle I absolutely support. I also think that the huge numbers of those on the lower end of the skills spectrum has driven down wages, and I think we're going to address that. But when Boris says he's going to put people before passports, he gives me no indication of whether numbers will go down or perhaps they'll even go up under a Boris Johnson government. We will see. Back to HS2, and yeah, there's some real passion here. Slightly separately, but importantly, I get this. On text. Our roads are completely gridlocked and it makes travelling tortuous. Why not build a network of autobahns? Most cars can travel at well over 100 miles per hour, even electric ones. This would benefit many more people. Whoever you are, I agree with you. I mean, the current speed limit of 70 miles an hour is frankly ludicrous, but that depends on traffic conditions. And far from giving us roads where we can go more quickly, what are they doing? They're building smart motorways, so that when we break down, there's no hard shoulder and our chance of getting killed goes up. And that, of course, means that those with less money and with the cheapest cars will actually be, without doubt, at the very greatest risk. And that means students, young people, etc. And because they're smart motorways, every blooming bridge has a speed camera on it. So motorway travel in this country is going to get slower, not quicker. And I do think the French system is so much more sensible. You know, they've got a speed limit. It's about 83 miles an hour, okay? But if it rains, they bring it right down. It's a variable limit according to the weather conditions. And that kind of makes sense to me. But on an open motorway at night, 70 miles an hour, I think, is utterly ludicrous. I know some will disagree, but that's how I feel. And we will discuss smart motorways at some point in the next few weeks, because I keep going up and down this M20 in Kent. It's doing my head in that it's 50 miles an hour for about 35 miles coming up from Folkestone to London. And I know much of the M1's been through the same, the M23's going through the same thing. And we will at some point discuss smart motorways and what it means for road safety. For the moment, it is HS2. Johnny says, look, we've spent $7 billion on HS2, but some of it's land and property. Surely we could get some of the cash back. I suspect that is probably right. Jordan is calling from Chorley. Jordan, good evening.
Oh, hello, Nigel. Good evening, and a pleasure to be on your radio show.
Well, welcome. It's very nice to speak to you. So this project, this project, if you're an engineer, then I'm told you are, this project, you must be sort of slightly in favour of it, really, Jordan.
Well, yes. I do a lot of reading on construction magazines and articles and papers. And being a member of the Institution of Civil Engineers, I thought I'd give a engineering perspective on it.
Please.
Considering I work in the rail sector as well, and speak to many designers and people, I thought there's many attributes that people often forget about it. We all know it's high speed, but what people don't always put in their mind is also high capacity, high reliability, but also, most importantly, it frees up the existing Victorian infrastructure all the way across the country. So to give you an example, Milton Keynes is a really good example of this. There are about 10 trains that go through every hour to London. Mm-hmm. Now, do you know by any chance how many of those actually stop at Milton Keynes?
Jordan, I haven't got an earthly idea. Tell me.
It's all right. It's a rhetorical question. Go on. And about 3 of those stop every hour.
Right.
Because all the rest of them are at full capacity and completely full. So the idea being is that by building this new set of railway, you free up all the existing infrastructure for freight.
All right. So how many people a day would HS2 take between London and Manchester? Do you know the answer to that?
Actually, I'm trying to panic and look on my other phone for that answer, so I used to know.
Okay.
And I'm a bit disappointed in myself. But,
and Jordan, let me ask you a direct question. If HS2 goes ahead, will you financially benefit from it?
Funny enough, I'm a brand new homeowner because I'm from Nottingham, and I purchased my house this year in Long Eaton to be next to the new train hub that's going to be built there.
Okay.
So, yes.
Oh, yes. Okay. Well, listen, that's honest and that's fine. Jordan, let me just put this to you. However brilliant it is as an engineering project, etc., and yes, it would perhaps relieve some capacity off the existing lines. This was estimated to cost 33 billion. Then it was 56. Then it was 88. Now it's 106. It's bonkers, Jordan.
It is bonkers. But I have thought of a compromise on this recently.
Go on.
Because a lot of the phases always start from the south and work their way upwards, a bit like starting from the tree trunk. So they go from London to Birmingham, to Manchester.
Come on, give us the compromise.
So the compromise would be, I would say, we all know that the northern powerhouse, as they say, is per head spent less than any other rail infrastructure. So, and often the cost is so enormous, I think for the most instantaneous bargain for your buck, so to speak, they should do it in reverse order.
Okay, now do you know what? I'm not for HS2. I'm not for HS2, but if you're going to do it, start the other way around. I agree with that, Jordan. I thank you. Rebecca is a new caller to the show from Weybridge. Rebecca, time is tight. You've got 40 seconds to tell me why HS2 is a good or a bad idea.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much. Nice to talk to you.
Good to talk to you.
I think the environmental aspect has to be absolute priority. The biodiversity and the loss of wildlife, the species of trees, it's ancient woodland. It's not a small area. It's mile upon mile, acres of land of ancient woodland, which we will never get back. And they're going to say that they can rebuild it with saplings. That just will not do. And I really think we have to take this so seriously. It's an astronomical cost for something that will wipe out tens of thousands of years of ancient woodland, and it's so imperative that we keep that. So
Rebecca, thank you. Thank you. Said with great passion. And the third caller making the environmental argument against HS2. If you've got to build the thing, build it next to the existing railway line, not somewhere completely different. I think that does make sense. Now, we hear that Lord Hall is standing down from his job as Director General of the BBC. Well, the BBC could do with some shaking up, so I'm thinking about popping in a CV later on this evening. At 10 o'clock tonight, it's Tom Swarbrick, but up next, it's Ian Dale.
That could guarantee your peerage.
Well, it's the only way it's ever going to happen.
I think you may be right there. Thank you very much, Nigel. Coming up on the show, we have our Monday night panel at 8. What should the structure of government be after Brexit? Because I think it is going to change, isn't it? We're going to be joined by an absolutely stellar panel. Sue Cameron, the political journalist, former Whitehall editor at the FT.